lines I write, I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage, and I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares, nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United... Just kidding. That's just crazy talk. Crazy propaganda talk. Thank you all for tuning in. The Anti-Media Radio, once again, here with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on UCY.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. Hopefully everyone can hear me because my computer program is glitching out on me, of course, the moment I go to call into the show. So if you're not hearing me, bear with me. If you are, we're going to start adding our panel together once the program unfreezes. Anyway, we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff tonight. Great show on Monday, awesome panel put together. Tonight we're going to be talking about a little bit of the same stuff, a little bit of some different stuff. One thing from our promotional meme tonight, the protest of the Dakota Access Pipeline is ongoing. If you haven't been keeping up with it, you can check out on the antimedia.org and check out our coverage because we are covering it. There's still somewhat of a media blackout on this thing. I don't know. They don't want to talk about it. So we're going to be keeping up on that. Unfortunately, one of our journalists was there, but he wasn't able to call in while he was there. But anyway, he gave me some updates, and a lot of stuff going on. One thing that I wanted to quickly talk about was the fact. I'm sure everybody heard about how they cut the water off at the protest, and there was a huge deal made out of that. But according to my sources, the Native Americans out there weren't even relying on that water anyway. Like the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers pulled their water tanks off the land over there, and it really didn't affect them that much. So it's not a huge deal. It's not going to have people out there, dying of thirst or anything like that. So, the protesters are doing well. They could obviously use more support. They could use more people showing up. It's over in North Dakota. If you're anywhere near the area, please get out there, bring supplies, send supplies. I mean, they've set up roadblocks and checkpoints around the area to try to deter people, confuse people, but people are still getting there. From the last estimate that I saw, there's like 4,000 people there now, which is a huge number. There's dozens and dozens of different tribes that have come out and sent their support. Even a tribe from here in San Diego, where I'm located, sent a letter of support. This is pretty historic, actually. It's pretty historic because there's more tribes coming together now than there has been in a really, really long time. So, that's always good news. But, we're waiting to hear an update on, this lawsuit that's going on. There's some kind of injunction, and here's the other thing that we just found out. There's the pipeline company didn't even have an easement set up on the Army Corps of Engineer land. So I mean, it's almost as if the Army Corps of Engineers was just going to let them build this pipeline illegally over their land without having the proper, set up. You're supposed to have a quote unquote easement, which is like an agreement that you come up with, because obviously this pipeline is being made by a private company. You have to come up with an agreement with the people whose land you're building the pipeline on. So many people who own land in the area agreed to let the pipeline go through their land for a certain kind of settlement, or a payout, or they pay them whatever the land's worth, or if you're in a position to negotiate, you can try to get percentages of the proceeds that come through the pipeline. I mean, it's up for negotiation. The Army Corps of Engineers was just going to let them build the pipeline without any kind of easement, So, kind of tells you that the government was kind of in bed on this deal. Maybe there were some backdoor dealings going on with this pipeline. Makes perfect sense, because the other thing about these pipelines, many times there's people that own property or land in the path of the pipeline that aren't willing to give up their land for the pipeline to cross, because either they don't believe in the pipeline, they think it could leak and harm their land, or it's just going to be in their way of their farm, or whatever the issue may be. And if that's the case, then normally what happens is the government comes in with eminent domain, and they come in and they take your land anyway, and they just say, too bad. And, sometimes they'll cut you a settlement, they'll give you a little bit of money or whatever. But, the fact of the matter is eminent domain will trump your own property rights. So that goes on a lot on these big construction projects. And therefore, there's no doubt that there's a lot of backdoor dealings going on and that kind of thing. So, I mean, just this easement thing, it just blows me away. The government was going to let them build it over their land without even having an agreement put together. So, I mean, were they even going to pay them for using the land, or it's just going to be used? I mean, can anybody just go build on Army Corps of Engineer land without having an agreement about how they're going to pay for using it? I mean, oh man, this is just crazy. It's just more of this kind of, privatization, of the public lands and stuff. All right, give me a few seconds, you guys. Don't go away. I got to restart my program because right now I can't get anybody on to join the call, and I can't take callers or anything. So I'm going to restart really quick, and hopefully I'll be back in a minute or two.
Hey, how you doing there, brothers?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm great. I just wanted to touch on some things that I hear you guys speaking about.
Go ahead.
Especially the Donald Trump issue. And I would like for you guys to reiterate a little bit on what your perspective was on Donald Trump.
Sure. I mean, Jake, why don't you go first?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I would just like for you guys to touch on your feelings about Donald Trump and his whole presidency. This whole presidential rat race, I like to call it. I would like for you guys to touch on it a little bit.
Well, it's certainly a rat race. I mean, my personal opinion is that Trump is a businessman who's figured out a formula for tapping into a lot of people's insecurities and fears, and is using that to rally a kind of coalition of, isolationist, traditionalist Americans. And I think a lot of it is, not all of it, but I think some of it is coming from a deep place of xenophobia and racism. I don't want to say that all Trump supporters are that, because I certainly don't think that's the case. But I also think that Trump has some very unorthodox foreign policy views that's getting him in trouble with the elites right now, because I don't think they know how to handle what he's proposing to do. I don't like Trump personally. I'm not going to vote for him, and I think he's a dangerous person. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, that's great to hear. But me personally, and I consider myself, as speaking as far as status, I would be technically classified as an African American. As far as which I don't go by that. And my identification doesn't say that, but Trump actually is speaking more of an honest level of policy that's going on in government than Hillary. All right, Hillary is known as a war criminal. She's known for many things. although people like to sweep it under the rug. But Trump is just speaking what's going on in policy. Now, I don't plan on voting at all this year.
Well, I think you make a good point, which is that many of the domestic economic policies that Hillary Clinton supports, for example, well, not exactly domestic, but these free trade agreements that she is.
Well, and also things she's been caught up in as far as scandals. You know, you can't expect the mainstream media to open up that information to you. But she's been caught up in many scandals. The whole
absolutely. I don't like Hillary Clinton either. I have a whole list of things I don't like about her as well. Yeah, she is a war criminal, and this is just an unfortunate election of two very unlikable people, and I don't,
All you have to do with Hillary to see what's in store for you is see how she treated Haiti, see how she's continuing to treat Haiti, and see
pretty much the whole Haiti situation is pretty much was about the money. That actually funded the campaign, what a lot of people don't know.
Well, it's ruining the whole country's economy.
Yeah. She ruined that. She had first-hand experience with ruining that. So. But as far as the whole presidential race right now, how do you guys feel about the New World Order, people like to call it, which is really an old world order if you look through history? They're just bringing something about that already been implemented for the longest.
If they convince our population that at this point is possibly dumb down enough to accept the chip, then it's game over.
Dumbed down and brainwashed.
Yeah.
Most of our population don't have a clue as to what's going on, and if they do, they are afraid. So they live in a fear-based lifestyle. So they are living where they just feel like they don't want it to ruin their life. As long as they can get up and go to work, which is the system that you live in, all right, which is the systematic matrix. Get up, go to work, be a good old boy, be a good old citizen.
You bring up a good point. I'll give you my thoughts on the election. Yeah, I think the whole thing is a huge shit show, and it's just it really is just a way to placate the entire public. You give everybody the illusion that they're voting and that they're choosing who's going to rule them, which in itself is kind of an oxymoron. But we're giving people this
because we all know by now they're selected. They're not elected.
Exactly. We're giving people this illusion of choice, and really what it does is it kills any type of kinetic roots momentum for any kind of real change to happen. I mean, look at the Bernie Sanders campaign as a perfect example of how he kind of just, how it basically identified and isolated a bunch of legitimate leftist angst among the population, tired of inequality, tired of being broke, tired of student debt, tired of bad working.
Well, Bernie dropped out for a reason. Bernie dropped out because he knew what was going on. And Bernie, guess what? Bernie actually went to meet with the Pope as well, and they made sure Bernie dropped out. The Pope is the president's boss. Don't get it confused, my brothers.
So,
all right?
Issue with
this corporation of the United States.
The issue with the entire voting process here is that it really, all it does is it kills out people's legitimate anger and legitimate, energy that they have to try to affect real change. It gets eaten up and dissolved by elections. The same exact thing happened in 2008 with the election of Obama. I mean, look at the anti-war movement that existed back in 2005, 2006, 2007, all of the opposition to the Iraq war, everybody talking shit about Bush and how he did this horrible thing in Iraq, which I agree with all of that. Then Obama ran on this, huge anti-war platform, and I'm going to end the wars, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Obama was elected.
Obama did a lot worse. Okay, I'm speaking from somebody as a status standpoint who will classify themselves as African American. I'm going to tell you, my people, Obama didn't do nothing. He did worse than Bush.
Yeah,
okay?
I mean, in many ways,
he did 10 times worse than Bush.
And so Obama dissolved this anti-war movement. It existed in 2008. It doesn't exist now. Because, he's a Democrat, and traditionally the anti-war movement has lived in the left wing of politics. And when there's a Republican president, the Democrats are anti-war. when there's
Well, democracy itself is a demonistic system. So we got to go into etymology. Democracy itself is a demonistic system. It has no type of, relevancy when it comes to fixing anything. It's just an illusion. Everything is an illusion.
I don't want to go too far into the occult stuff, but yeah, I mean, I think you have a great point. We're gonna have to move on to the next caller, man. Yeah. Thank you for calling in, though. Great call. Yeah, I mean, he brings up a good point, and I feel really strongly about this. Anybody who follows my personal profile and stuff, that I'm not a huge fan of the democratic process. But it's what we're stuck with right now, and so therefore we're gonna have to work within the democratic process for the time being. Until eventually a better, more just system comes around. But, that's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the next election. It's not going to happen probably not until the next generation or maybe after that, because it's going to take a lot of, collective evolution. It's going to take a lot of conscious, I don't know, I hate to co-opt Derek's term, but it's going to take a conscious resistance, man. It's going to be a generational battle that we're facing here. I mean, this struggle for justice throughout the world. I mean, it's been going on for millennia. It's not going to change over one generation. I mean, the anti-war movement back in the 60s accomplished a lot of good work. And we saw how the establishment really tried to kill off the anti-war movement and kill off all of the radical movements going on in the 60s. And in many ways, they were successful. In many ways, they weren't. I mean, war became really unpopular after Vietnam, and it only got repopularized really after 9/11. I mean, there was the Cold War continuing, and then they did a couple Iraq war invasions and stuff like that. But war didn't become popular until after 9/11, and now Hillary Clinton, going back to the political candidates, Clinton is actually running on like a pro-war platform. We haven't seen this happen in a really long time, and that kind of goes to show you where the population has moved. Because even Bush back in 2000, he was running on an anti-war platform, on an anti-imperial platform, and it's a very similar platform to what Obama ended up running on in 2008. And Bernie was, I wouldn't call Bernie an anti-war candidate, but he was very much critical of nation building in many ways. I think Bernie Sanders, actually his biggest weak point was on foreign policy, but even Donald Trump, as you were mentioning, Jake, even with Trump, he's a little bit unorthodox on foreign policy. He breaks from the norm. He definitely criticized George Bush and the Iraq invasion, and then he criticized Obama and Hillary Clinton on the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. He's been slightly critical of what goes on in Syria, but at the same time, he's kind of advocating carpet bombing the Middle East and turning the Middle East into a nuclear wasteland. And honestly, I mean, he's made some talk that's unorthodox foreign policy wise. But if Trump would actually be elected, I think it would just be more of the status quo. Anyway, we got a couple more callers on the line. So first, I'm going to go to caller from 773 area code. How's it going? You're on the Anti-Media Radio. What do you want to talk about?
Hello, guys. Big fan here. I just want to get some feedback from you guys, if that's cool.
Go ahead.
I just found out today I'm a Mexican, full-blooded Mexican, natural citizen, though. Why is he in Mexico? What's going on there?
Oh, that's a good question. And I was actually going to bring that up this show because there was some hilarious shit-talking going on today online because as a Mexican, you probably are aware about how unpopular Mexican President Peña Nieto is, too. I mean, this guy is utterly corrupt and incompetent and inept, heavy-handed, authoritarian. I mean, look how they've been cracking down on social movements in Mexico. He's by no means a popular president. In fact, he's probably about as popular as Trump, which, looking at the polling, it's basically the least popular candidate in the history of polling American presidential candidates. So what was Trump doing in Mexico? That's a good question. On one hand, I think it was probably like a PR stunt. On the other hand, it's probably Trump trying to look presidential if he's actually trying to win. What do you make of it, caller from 773? What do you think?
I totally agree with you. Peña Nieto is a piece of worthless shit scumbag, just as Donald Trump. I do believe that is a public stunt to get more Mexican voters on his side, Donald Trump's side, and I think that's utter stupidity if anybody does vote for him. I live in Chicago. I don't know if you guys follow sports, but Dwayne Wade's cousin was shot and killed here like 4 days ago. And Donald Trump went and said that he said something like very, very out of hand, talking about, you guys are going to vote for me because I will stop black-on-black crime. This is not quote, but it pissed me off because he was from Miami. He came here to Chicago to play ball for us, and it's like, the shit Donald Trump is doing is ridiculous. It's like, he makes fun of us immigrants all over the world, but if I remember correctly, going through his history, wasn't he born in Australia or Austria and came to America as well as an illegal immigrant?
I'm not sure. Maybe you're talking about his wife, because I recently saw...
I know his wife is. His wife, yeah, but I thought Donald Trump was born and raised over there, too.
I'm not sure about that. I'd have to check on that. But, I recently saw that there's questions surrounding the legal status of Donald Trump's wife, and so it is really hypocritical for him to be talking about stopping the flow of immigration when, his wife very well may have immigrated illegally, quote unquote, to the United States as well. But, overall, Trump is just kind of what Jake was mentioning at the beginning of the show. Really, he's just tapping into a vein of xenophobia, people scared of Muslims, scared of immigrants. But I think the underlying cause, and if you look back at many instances throughout the past where there was large flows of immigration, whether it was the Irish migration during the potato famine and the German migration, many different instances, decades and decades ago where waves of immigrants come into the United States. People are always worried and scared that they're coming and that the jobs are going to be messed up. But what normally underlies this sentiment is economic insecurity. And that's why I think Trump has been able to do what he's done and become so popular with a lot of people, is because the United States, ever since the 2008 financial crisis, the working class, the middle class, never really recovered. I mean, they say the recession is over. They say that the economy is fixed. But if you look at the statistics and stuff, I mean, the fact of the matter is the middle class has pretty much been gutted, and the economy has recovered, but all of the wealth that's been recovered has gone up to the very top of the pyramid, to the 1%, the extremely rich. And so I think the reason why Trump is able to tap into all the xenophobia and anti-immigrant rhetoric and make it work is because people are just so damn worried about their jobs and their paychecks, and that why their mortgages are underwater and why they can't afford to live in a home, and why is it that our parents were able to buy a house with one job and on one income and have kids and cars and all this stuff, and why is it now that we have to have two people working full-time jobs, and then one of those people have to have a side job, and everybody's got to be hustling, and people have to have roommates, and people can't even afford, it's crazy. The economic situation has completely changed. I mean, it's been a long time in the making ever since, people, you can argue about when it's all started, 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve, or 1971 with the closing of the financial window, creating the completely fiat currency that we have now. And, the Federal Reserve constantly printing money and the bailouts and all the stuff that's gone on since 2008. There's a lot of stuff that's affecting this, but it's created a situation of economic insecurity for pretty much everybody that's not extremely rich, and that's why people like Trump are getting popular, and that's also why Bernie Sanders was very popular, and that's why Hillary Clinton isn't inspiring anybody. Sure, Hillary Clinton is supposedly leading Trump in the polls, but nobody's really excited about voting for Hillary Clinton unless you're a 55-year-old feminist Democrat that is a woman that has been wanting a woman president your whole life. I mean, that's literally the only reason to be excited about Hillary Clinton. Everything else is just, she's marred in scandal. She's probably one of the dirtiest politicians in the country. And so nobody's going to be excited for her. In fact, I just saw that her unfavorability ratings is literally only 1 percentage point behind Trump. Trump and Clinton are now the two most unpopular presidential candidates in the history of polling in the United States. So nobody gives a shit about Clinton. She is just she's getting in there literally purely on connections, purely on her leverage and her name recognition. Like, if she wins, that's what it'll be about. And, maybe even corruption, maybe rigging the elections and stuff.
If she survives her first term, I'd be amazed. And I think Bill's going to go within a year.
What do you think? Natural cause? Like, is her health that
She's
bad?
super sick, man. Like, and I have a feeling they're probably both being poisoned. Probably because they've honestly offed so many people. Somebody's gotten to them now.
Oh man, that's just imagine that.
If they're poisoning each other.
Yeah, Bill's poisoning her, and she's poisoning him. They both think that neither one of them knows it's happening, right? Caller from 773. Did you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, you were mentioning about the Federal Reserve and all that money and whatnot.
Sure, go ahead.
I think the U.S. is in debt with China, like trillions of millions of dollars, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a huge debt. I think DB probably knows a little.
I was just talking about this to one of my buddies last night, a deep conversation about this. I was telling him, if U.S. makes our own money, how the fuck are we still in debt if we print out our own money? Why don't we just print out a bunch of money and just pay our debt off so we could be even before we get blown to shit by China and North Korea and Vladimir Putin and whatever?
Well, that's a good question. The issue with printing money out, it's kind of, imagine it like a pie, right? You got one pie, and that's the U.S. economy, and that's like our monetary supply, right? That's all of our money and all that. And when you print money, you're kind of just taking one pie and slicing it into smaller and smaller bits. And that's the problem. Now, the only thing that can counteract that, and the only thing that can make your pie bigger, is what we're doing right now and what we've done for a long time. But a lot of people aren't sure how long it can keep up, and that's by having the strongest military in the world and using force to get people to be under the influence of your monetary system, and to force people to use the dollar for all of their international transactions. Most commodity trades throughout the world, like oil and wheat and soybeans and rice, all these big commodities that are traded internationally, whether it's from Japan or from Europe or Africa, for the most part, most of these countries have to do transactions with the dollar, and that's no coincidence. It's actually done, through agreements, treaties, and deals. And then if someone decides they don't want to do that, well, that's what happened with Libya, and that's also what happened with Iraq. Saddam Hussein was wanting to trade his oil with something other than the dollar, and then the next thing you know, it's like we're overthrowing his country. And the same thing happened in Libya. He was trying to establish, Gaddafi was trying to establish a Africa-wide gold-backed currency called the African dinar. And it was only a little short time after that, when he announced his intentions, that we were overthrowing his government because he needed freedom, because the country needed freedom, supposedly. But the reality of it is that most foreign policy things that the United States does is for geopolitical, resource, or economic reasons, corporate interest reasons. And Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, a lot of the pressure that we're putting on Iran, and also what's going on with Russia right now, and us trying to contain and isolate Russia, a lot of it goes back to trying to preserve the United States economy and the monetary system, because a lot of these actors around the world are kind of looking at the dollar, and they're kind of worried that they don't know how long it could last, so they're trying to hedge their bets, or they're trying to diversify their currencies and the way that they make their trades and stuff, because if the U.S. dollar system collapses, well, then everyone in the world gets sucked in with it, because everyone's relying on that system. And so that's kind of how the U.S. gets away with printing money and doing this quantitative easing, which was this very controversial policy that was taking place over the last couple of years, ever since 2008, where they were literally printing out, I think it was $800 billion every quarter.
Nick, what would the U.S. military industrial complex be allowed to accomplish if we actually did go belly up, meaning that the country went bankrupt and our economic system collapsed? I think what you're looking at is an impending free-for-all, where they're going to have the ability to attempt a Pax Americana and literally just fight everyone and take everything.
Well, I mean, to do that, you have to have a manufacturing base willing to support you.
Not anymore. I guarantee you they have enough people underground right now that have never seen the sunlight before, and they can get it all done automated.
Oh, well,
Area 51.
Area 51 is nothing, man. They have things underground that are cities, and they're connected by...
I heard they're called dumps, deep underground military bases.
They have so many dumps with automated factories that are pumping drones out while we speak right now. They don't need anybody.
It's a funny acronym for the word DUMS, right?
There's also the continuance of government groups that are underground.
Yeah, but the only thing that can stop this stuff, and unfortunately, is the American public. And I don't have that much hope for them at the time being, because right now a bunch of these idiots are supporting Trump, and a bunch of these idiots are supporting Clinton as crooked as shit.
That's what they're setting up. Think about it. If you're trying to take the world over, right, but you have a population over you, literally, in big cities, hundreds of millions of people, the only way you can do what you're trying to do is get them to fight each other, and they're doing a damn good job of setting that up. And when they get to the point where the ATMs don't spit out cash and gas stations don't work and grocery stores clear out in 3 days, then all their work's done for them.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that. And so that's what we got work to do to make sure we're not dividing and conquering and fighting each other instead of identifying the real problem here, striking the root, so to speak, right? And that's what it's all about, is striking the root. There's so many superficial things that can be talked about, and we could all argue about Colin Kaepernick as much as I think...
I was just about to say that. This is how brainwashed we are. Donald Trump says, make America great or whatever, and everybody's rooting for him or whatever. America basically saying, we support Donald Trump, that he wants to get all the immigrants out, all the black people out. Colin Kaepernick doesn't stand for the national anthem, and they make that a big deal, when both of them are basically doing the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Trump and Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, exactly. We had a meme about that yesterday, and it's hypocritical, man, and that's the problem with conservatives in general, Republicans, is that it's the most hypocritical political group in the United States. Don't get me wrong, liberals and Democrats are almost as bad. I mean, they're bad too. I mean, look at them. They're in 2008, they were the biggest anti-war movement ever, and in 2016, they're going to elect a candidate that's openly running to expand our wars overseas and stuff like that. So they're hypocritical too. But I mean, conservatives are like, it's just patently hypocritical that it's like just so easy to make fun of them. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, the Kaepernick thing. I mean, obviously, I agree with what he did. I think he definitely has the right to not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, or the national anthem. In fact, I think that if you actually were paying attention, you wouldn't be standing for the national anthem or pledging allegiance either, because this country has drifted far away from any idea or any of the philosophies that it was supposedly founded on. The founding of this country was a flawed, it was a flawed action. I mean, there was the U.S. government, even while George Washington was still president, there was a whiskey rebellion, which many people don't know about, which is basically when the government, we fought this revolutionary war against Britain in many ways over taxes. As soon as George Washington becomes president, he issues a huge tax on whiskey, and the people in Pennsylvania started rebelling against started rebelling against Washington. And they went in and they put down this rebellion violently. They killed people. They arrested people. I mean, this country has been hypocritical from the beginning. I'm not saying it's a horrible place. I'm not saying that it's a bad country. I'm not saying that people in the United States are bad people. I think maybe they're good people with good intentions that have been misled, and they've been brainwashed, and they've been conditioned to the maximum. I think the people of America, they're number one in many things. One of them is being brainwashed and nationalist. They love their flag. They love their national anthem, apparently. I don't even know the words to it, but I doubt the people that are up in arms about Kaepernick, mad about the national anthem, probably don't know the words to it either.
Isn't it something like hit me baby one more time, or isn't that in there?
Yeah, dude. Isn't it a song by like Katy Perry or Kanye West or something? I don't know. Britney Spears, that's right. There you go. Yeah, man, I mean, it's just a huge hypocritical mess. Anyway.
No more questions, and I'm out of your hair, guys.
All right, go ahead.
9/11, inside job or not an inside job?
Nope.
Allowed to happen.
No comment, man. It's just too
allowed to happen. So it was inside job, but it wasn't like pulled off by them. They just let it go.
The main issue with 9/11, I'm not as concerned with who did it. I mean, the recent 28-page report, if you want to believe the content of that report, shows that Saudi Arabia was more or less behind it. So looking at it like that, I mean, it was just by looking at what the government has already admitted, it was a false flag, because a false flag means that someone else is assigned blame for something that someone else did, right? And so Iraq basically took the blame for 9/11, even though the blame should have been placed on Saudi Arabia, according to what the government has told us. So just, at the very least, I think it was a false flag. But the biggest issue about 9/11 is not who did it, it's how we reacted to it. And the way we reacted was a global war on terror. We're talking about basically a silent World War III, where we're in Obama is bombing like 8 countries right now as we speak. There's probably drones flying over 12 or more countries doing surveillance, but we're actively bombing like 8 countries right now, and we're willing to pursue terrorism in any country. There's no borders when it comes to our foreign policy and the war on terror. And then the other thing is that after 9/11 is they eroded a bunch of our civil liberties, a bunch of our privacy. The NSA was given a bunch of powers with the Patriot Act, and nothing is more privacy, and that's a huge issue. And it chills our free speech. It makes people self-censor each other. And so that's the big issue with 9/11 is how we reacted to it, not so much I think who did it.
All right, and this one last question. And if you guys are, who are you guys going to vote for, Trump or Hillary?
Oh, that's an easy question. Neither.
Neither. Thank you. You made my.
I could speak for everybody at least on our panel tonight. I know nobody's a.
Can't you just write D's nuts in?
D's nuts. D's nuts. D's nuts. we made a joke a while back about Vermin Supreme and D's nuts. I mean, think about it. It's a Supreme Nuts ticket. It would be great. I don't know. I think some of the people here are leaning towards Jill Stein, and I think if I were to vote, I would if there was a better candidate on the Libertarian ticket, that'd be the way I might be leaning. But I'm not a huge fan of Gary Johnson either, because he's not a very articulate, or his policies aren't very strong, and he doesn't make a great case either. And so I'm not.
It's super important though, if you're going to vote at all, that you don't vote for somebody that'll support TPP, because it'll probably kill your own job, and they'll do it legally.
Yeah, Gary Johnson's pro TPP.
I don't vote at all. I don't care. One last question, I'm out this time for real. I don't vote at all because I believe our vote doesn't matter. Does our vote matter?
Does it matter? Well, I don't know. In the current system, I think voting and actually believing that if you're voting for one of the main parties, I think that vote is actually doing more harm than good. Like if you're voting for Hillary Clinton or for Donald Trump, and you're thinking your intent in that vote is to actually accomplish something, or that you're accomplishing something, I think that you're actually doing more harm than good, because you're throwing away any kind of energy that you could use elsewhere. Because most people, when they vote, and taking Obama's 2008 run as a perfect example, and I know I already talked about this earlier on in the show, but it's worth bringing up again. There was so much activist energy and so much of a movement and so much love and so much passion behind Barack Obama in 2008. And the next day he got elected, everyone's partying and everyone's celebrating in the streets. The day after that, everyone went home, everyone shut up, nobody questioned the war again. That was it. It was done. And Obama came in, he continued Bush's policies. He pretended like he was going to end the war in Afghanistan. He didn't. He said he was going to end the war in Iraq. He did, just for a very, very short time, and then he went right back in to fight ISIS, supposedly. And so if you're voting for one of these two major parties, then I think you're basically doing more harm than good, because you're misleading yourself, you're lying to yourself, you're pretending that you're accomplishing something. If you're voting for one of the third parties, I think it's okay, because that that person may not win, but that you're in for the long run. You're trying to build a movement. You're trying to, do the groundwork to make maybe a green candidate happen in a couple, maybe in a couple of elections from now. Maybe a green candidate will actually have a chance, or maybe an independent or a libertarian would actually have a chance a couple of elections from now. But, voting for one of those parties and putting in the work and participating in the building of an grassroots organization, that to me is not destructive. But voting Republican or Democrat, you're just, really just, and the other problem is you're consenting. Like if you voted for Obama,
you're giving written consent. I mean, imagine what they can do when they declare war. They can say 90 million people voted for Hillary or whatever. So obviously that's enough people to get this declaration of war signed.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And even that, and that's definitely, that's the other thing. That's not going to happen, because even Obama only garnered like around 30% of the eligible voters to vote for him.
They didn't have the voting machines all refined then, Nick. Though now they're bulletproof.
Yeah, and so voter participation in the United States is so damn low that you'd have to argue that the president even has a mandate. And I wrote an article recently about that, about how the New York Times put out that analysis about how only 9% of the population voted for Trump and Hillary in the primaries, and so really illegitimate mandate there. If either one of these people get elected, I mean, they were elected by a small minority of the voting population. So, in my opinion, that is not a mandate. Caller from 773, thank you for calling in, and great questions. I enjoyed the conversation. We got another caller that we're gonna have to move on to.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, listen to us 5 days a week, and call back whenever you want. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, some good callers tonight. We got another caller on the line from 916 area code. How's it going? You're on the Anti-Media. What do you want to talk about? 916, if you're there, you can speak up. If not, we're going to have to drop the call. If you're just calling in to listen to the show, you could listen on ucy.tv or the antimedia.org/radio, and you could listen to the show there. If you decide to call back in, go for it, and we'll entertain your call, and we'll talk about. You want to ask us some questions, you want to chime into the conversation that we're having, we're open to it. So I had to drop that call. Interesting article, going over now to the news over on the antimedia.org. U.S. State Department offers $3 million bounty on ISIS leader that they trained. I mean, this is filed under the shit you can't make up category on the Anti-Media. So back from 2003 to 2014, the United States State Department, of course, part of that time was being headed by Hillary Clinton, was training this guy. He was a colonel from Tajikistan, which is a troubled area over in Eurasia where they're trying to deal with, terrorism and unrest and a bunch of stuff. The U.S. was training this guy supposedly in counterterrorism measures, and he was supposed to be a counterterror agent colonel over in Tajikistan, and it turns out we even brought him to the United States. He was being trained by Blackwater in North Carolina, and now this guy defected, and now he's in ISIS. Now he's one of the high leaders in ISIS, and now the same State Department that helped train this guy is offering a $3 million bounty on his head. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I mean, this is the kind of story that it just goes to show how convoluted our foreign policy is. I mean, our foreign policy is a shit show. And some people say, well, it's by design, and, we're creating enemies so that we can just continuously fight them, perpetual war and stuff. Other people would just say the government is inefficient, they don't know what the hell they're doing. I think it's a little bit of both, but, this is just so dumb.
Well, doesn't one allow the other, Nick? I mean, if the government actually gave a shit, they would stop doing this stuff, but because they don't and they're corrupt, then this stuff can happen.
Yeah, I mean, good point, dude. And it just kind of perpetuates itself, and the U.S. with our irresponsible foreign policy. I mean, how many people need to say it? How many experts, how many former CIA need to come out and talk about how we're creating terrorists overseas by dropping bombs and drone strikes and invasions and regime change and puppet governments and all that stuff? Every time we do that, man, we're just creating terrorists all around the world. And they're going to come, and eventually they're going to bomb us, or they're going to shoot up a nightclub, or they're going to, someone's going to be inspired into homegrown terrorism. But really, all our foreign policy is doing is ensuring perpetual war for as long as I could tell.
The thing is that what the media is helping to perpetuate is a two-front war, a war against terrorism, which means they can go into every country, like you've said earlier in the show and alluded to, where it's an endless war abroad. And then guess what? It ferments dissent at home because these are policies nobody who's sane supports. Yet what are we supposed to do? Go against the government with some AR-15s? I mean, even with AR-15s, we barely have a chance. So nobody is going to purport that we're going to try to take down the government in a violent fashion. So guess what? The government's just going to keep clamping down until finally that's the only thing left to do. And they want a two-front war in perpetuity.
Yeah, man. And, that's, again, it goes back to the stuff that we have to prevent. The stuff that we don't want to happen is having to violently deal with a authoritarian government. I mean, right now we're doing it in a non-violent, for the most part, fashion, with limited success. But a violent insurrection, and I see people all the time talking about revolution in the United States and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of a, especially right now, for the time being, it's not a good idea because we're just not socially mature enough to do anything constructive if we were to win. I mean, they fight a revolution in the United States, and what are they going to do? Put Donald Trump in charge of it afterwards? I mean, this is the kind of thinking that is prevailing in the United States right now. That the most energized group of people are the ones supporting Trump, and they're leaning authoritarian. I mean, these people would, if they took up arms against the government and successfully overthrew the government, they would put a dictator in charge after that. I mean, I guarantee it.
Remember that the SS only numbered 250,000, and they got a country of 80 million to do their bidding. That's all it takes. You only need 1 to 2% energized, mobilized, ready to kick your ass, and there's nothing you can do about it. What are you going to do if 20 people show up at your door and say, guess what? You're about to go fight. You're going to go fight. So that's how it worked with them, and that's how it's worked throughout human history.
And the group mentality really kicks in, and you get a handful of people, and they can lead the whole country in the wrong direction, dude. And that definitely is a possibility. And then, it kind of does bring up some issues here with Trump and stuff because, as I mentioned before, and a couple episodes back, Hitler in many ways came to power democratically. He was imprisoned for trying to have a coup in Germany, and then he came out and he started running in politics, and he got elected. I mean, he was a pretty popular guy back then. And then he took advantage of several emergency situations, and one of them, which was a false flag on the Reichstag, to clamp down and give himself emergency powers. And then he did what he did. I just saw news that Obama just continued the Emergency Powers Act or whatever, some executive order, something that was passed right after 9/11 and the power was given to Bush. Obama just continued it. He just announced it yesterday. So the United States government has already given itself extraordinary powers over top of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which is in many ways why our rights are kind of been nullified. I mean, look at all the police killings. Look at the militarization of the police. I mean, the cops get away with it, but if the rule of law was prevailing right now, and if we actually had a rule of law and people had to follow it, cops wouldn't be getting away with killing 12-year-old boys in the park that were carrying BB guns and then not get charged for it. It's one thing to kill a kid. It's another thing to get away with it, and that's what's going on right now. We don't have a rule of law. It's been usurped by executive power. And so in many ways, the stuff that went on in Germany, it's already happening here, and all it needs is the right authoritarian figure to really take advantage of it. That could very well be Trump. I don't think...
And we need the right crisis, Nick. We have to have something that makes, like they've always alluded to, makes 9/11 look like nothing.
Yeah, exactly. But, I don't think Trump will be elected. I don't really think he wants to be elected. I'm not sure. Maybe he does. But judging by his actions and all of the gaffes and all the mess-ups and all the stupid shit that he said, it doesn't seem like he wants to be elected. In fact, it seems like maybe it was all a big scheme to maybe get Hillary Clinton elected. And, I don't think she's got the charisma. She does not have the charisma to usurp power like that. It wouldn't be Clinton.
There was concrete evidence of bank transfers made not only to him and his son, but Ted Cruz from the DNC. We're talking about like 20, 30, 40 million bucks. And these are just personal checks to these guys to do whatever they wish with the money. I mean, if that's not paying for something, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is that Trump, I mean, can he be bought for 50 million bucks? I don't think so. I mean, he's
he could be bought for $2 or $3 billion of free publicity, though.
For that, yeah. I mean, for that. Trump is buyable, I think. but not for a couple $1 million. But who knows, man? Who knows? He was close friends with the Clintons. In fact, the Trump and Clinton daughters are close friends still. And I think Trump is probably still good friends with Bill Clinton.
They're all in the club, right, Carlin?
Yeah, they're all in this big club, and we're not in it, but they are. And is Trump a bogus candidate running to give it to Clinton? I mean, I was just thinking about it this morning. It's like, man, any of those Republicans could have beat Clinton. Look how dirty she is. She's now tied with Trump within the margin of error as the most unpopular presidential candidate ever. Any of the other Republicans could have beat her. Marco Rubio would have walked into office unopposed. I mean, it would have been over. Rand Paul would have killed her. Even Ted Cruz would have beat her. I mean, as unlikable Ted Cruz is, he would have still beat Clinton. But Trump is like the only guy that could have lost to her, And so I mean, it's just I don't know, man. It's a big mess. It's a big show, and it's a big club that we're not in. Let me see if we can get a couple more of these news stories. We've got
you're in it, right, Nick? Because you're a Rothschild operative.
Yeah, according to my internet trolls, I'm part of the Rothschild family, and I run Facebook apparently. Top story today on the anti-media: 174 heroin overdoses in 6 days in one city. What you're not being told. This is an awesome analysis by one of our newer writers, Alice Saez, and talks about how there's this huge epidemic of not only, everyone knows about the opiate epidemic and how everyone's getting hooked on heroin because they're getting introduced to the drug by pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. Horrible thing going on. But now there's this even worse epidemic where just a huge amount of people are overdosing. 174 people in Cincinnati in 6 days overdosed on heroin. 26 residents in Cabell County, West Virginia, overdosed in 4 hours. And from May to July in 2016 in Louisville, Kentucky, the number of heroin and opiate overdoses has tripled. And this is all part of what's going on is dealers are cutting in to the regular heroin. First of all, it's being like watered down because, the drugs being, with the drug war and all that stuff, you got to smuggle the drugs, and every time it changes hands, somebody cuts it, waters it down, and what the dealers are doing is to make it more potent, they're adding new ingredients to it, and one of the things they're adding is, I think it's called fentanyl, and then, hold on, let me try to find, there's another one here. God, I can't find it in the article. It's such a long article. Guess that's the end.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.